Yeah, I don't think we've seen the consumer throwing in the towel. The consumer has been pretty resilient through a lot of these shocks. Part of that is also because there's been so much fiscal stimulus that put money into people's pockets that's gradually falling off. And I think as the unemployment rate starts to rise, people will become a little bit less optimistic about their employment prospects. And when they're a little bit more worried about potentially losing their job, they're going to rein in their consumption. So far, we haven't really seen we've seen a fairly muted impact on that. My guess is that impact will increase through the rest of the year, which means a little bit less strength in consumption, a little bit less strength in demand, and so further contributing to a slowdown.
Randy, I don't know whether Jay Powell has been practicing his gymnastics and whether he's even capable of doing a backflip, but nonetheless, is there any risk that if inflation raises its ugly head again, that we might move from a scenario where the Fed has already started cutting rates, but then it will have to backflip and start raising them again?
He's really hoping to avoid that. I think that's one of the reasons why he's waited. I think, if you were really worried about the potential slowdown and thinking about those the lagged effects of monetary policy, you probably would have started cutting in July. But one of the things that Jay doesn't want to do and his colleagues don't want to do is have exactly that situation. That's what happened in the late 70s, early 1980s, when inflation came down. The Fed said, all clear, we can cut interest rates. And they were wrong. Inflation started taking off again. And that's when interest rates went to double-digit levels. And the Fed certainly wants to avoid that. They don't want to lose their credibility. They've done a pretty good job of maintaining their credibility. If you look at intermediate to long-run inflation expectations, they haven't become unanchored. And certainly there was a lot of opportunity for that when the Fed kept saying this is transitory, and suddenly inflation was up at 9%. But they haven't lost. People haven't lost faith in them. But I think if inflation really did start to take off again and they had significantly cut rates, that's when you have a real risk of losing credibility, much like the Fed did in the late 70s, early 80s. And so I think that's why Jay had waited. And I'm sure what will happen is in the late fall or winter, people will say, see, I told you so, they should have cut earlier. But he didn't want to take that risk. And I think it was probably not unwise for him to say, we really have to be more convinced that inflation is coming down before cutting.